Lord, and I give thanks for His goodness within His firmaments, His golden days and blossoming nights, His gentle hands. Made I son of Him, life was divided in sweet harmony coming. Woman and children, oh, we are warriors. Oh, we are warriors. Oh, Cupid, it's too big. Let not your arrow from your bow, Lord. There's a mountain so silent and filled, fountains of water. For us His loving creatures, He gave us wisdom and knowledge, understand His love. Do we have to have one? Oh, we are one. There's a small confusion, it is a war. There are the ways as real, even being confused within your own head, because at times hearts get heavier than lead. Oh, we a warrior. Oh, we are warriors. Oh, we are warriors. Oh, Cupid, it's too bad. Let not your arrow from your bow, and never let it go. Children and read tales of untrue stories. It should begin when all around glory the hour has come, and still I can see the love is so wild for food, clothes, and shelter, and crying of mama prophecy has now revealed. The Son of Man won't take heed. The hurt is giving up. While life is taking a sudden shock, the crying of the people multiplying all over. Jah will give an answer to each and every one prayer. Are we a warrior? Are we a warrior? Are we a warrior? Oh, Cupid, it's Cupid. Let your arrow from your bow. Are we a warrior? Are we a warrior? Are we a
Rototom Sunsplash Reggae Festival is under attack by political and police force.
Levy, are you ready, Rototom, for Aisha?
Welcome to
In the early 1970s, Jamaicans fused the ethos of the oppressed with rhythms of Africa to produce a healing force named reggae. And by the end of the century, reggae had traveled the world, and the reggae anthem One Love was declared the song of the millennium. Fast forward to 2018, and UNESCO declares reggae an intangible cultural heritage of humanity. And the Coalition to Preserve Reggae Music continues on its mission. It started in 2005 to raise the bar in reggae music and increase its healing around the world. We, Jah people, can make it work if we come together and keep it real. Well, there's idle chatter and there's real talk. This is Real Talk. Greetings and welcome to Real Talk. It's the Natural Mystics edition of Real Talk on this Thursday, the 21st day of October 2021. And like I said, it's the Natural Mystics edition. And there's a natural mystic blowing through the air. And if you listen carefully, you just might hear what I want. Seeing? Yes.
There's a natural mystic blowing through the air. If you listen carefully now, you will hear. This could be the first trumpet.
Might as well be the last.
Many more will have to suffer. Many more will have to die. Don't ask me why. Things are not the way
They used to be. Won't tell no lie.
one and all got to face.
Reality now.
Though I try to find the answer to all the questions they ask. Oh, I know it's impossible to go living through the past. Don't tell no lie.
Oh,
There's a natural mystic flowing through the air. Can't keep them down. If you listen carefully now, you will hear. That's a natural mystic flowing through the air. This could be the first trumpet. Might as well be the last. Many more will have to suffer. Many more will have to die. Don't ask me why. There's a natural mystic flowing
Through the air,
I won't tell
no lie. Listen carefully, you will hear.
it's flowing through the air.
Kata kata kum kata katum tam, riggedy boom de boom de boom. Kata tum ta kum tum tum tam tum tam. Riggedy kan kan kay. Tam. Ring tum bidum bang bing bong. Dee da ba diddly biddy ba doo bang. Yes, indeed, a natural mystic blowing through the air. And if you listen to your inner self. Stop trying to listen to, foolishness. Just tune in. Tune in. Like in. Really in. And if you listen carefully, you will hear. God, this is about reggae music. And this evening, we're going to, well, first of all, greetings and welcome to Real Talk on this Thursday, October the 21st. Did I say that? I think I said it before, but hey, say it again for those of you just joining us. Greetings and welcome to Real Talk on this Thursday, October the 21st. It's 2 days after the birthday of Peter Tosh. And so we're going to be spending some time this evening just tuning in on Peter Tosh. And this piece is probably a good place to start. Yeah? Come in, Peter.
You started with Bob Marley. People in the press here say that you are now number one, he's number two. Do you feel competitive with him at all?
No, I am not here to be competitive, and the music, my father's music, is not for competition. Because if you go inside the Garden of Eden, there are many beautiful flowers. Each of them has a different color, and each of them is a different species, but they does not compete. See? So music should never compete because it comes from the same divine mind. Jah is my health and my strength, so whom shall I fear? He's a shield upon my right and my left hand, so whom shall I be afraid? Jah is my king. Jah is my light and my salvation, so whom shall I fear? He's my guide throughout this creation, so whom shall I be afraid? Jah is my king.
Peter Tosh was murdered at his Kingston home, September 1987.
In fact, September 11th, to be exact. 9/11, yes, is when we lost Peter in 1987, September 11th. Greetings and welcome to Real Talk. Ruth Woods is joining us in the chat room and she says, "Good evening. Cannot stay long, but I did share." Greetings, sister, and thank you so very much. You are such a beautiful spirit. I hope you enjoyed Peter Tosh and what he had to say and what he had to sing. We're celebrating his birthday. It passed 2 days ago, the 19th, but hey, everybody loves a good party, even a day or two late. Never too late to have a good celebration of someone as deserving of a celebration as Peter Tosh. I wonder what your experience is with Peter Tosh and how you feel about his music. I was hoping to have a guest this evening and, well, I don't know, it doesn't seem to be working out, but we will just enjoy Peter and talk a little bit about him. I would certainly love to hear from you out there what you think of Peter Tosh. The piece we just played, and I don't know if you listened keenly to the beginning. Maybe I should do it again and ask you to listen keenly to the beginning where let me do that. Listen keenly to the conversation at the beginning and let's talk a little bit about the contrast being drawn or the contrast being drawn in an attempt to draw Peter Tosh. It didn't work.
You started with Bob Marley. People in the press here say that you are now number one, he's number two. Do you feel competitive with him at all?
No, I am not here to be competitive, and the music, my father's music, is not for competition. Because if you go inside the Garden of Eden, there are many beautiful flowers. Each of them has a different color, and each of them is a different species, but they does not compete. See? So music should never compete because it comes from the same divine mind.
Comes from the same divine mind. Like I said, the interviewer drawing a contrast in an effort to draw Peter's tongue. And I think he had just a beautiful response to that, just staying away from the notion of who's number one and who's number two. And if you didn't hear it, what the interviewer said is that the press is now claiming that Peter is number one and Bob is number two. And how do you feel about the competition? Well, clearly, artists are competing for the hearts and minds of audiences. Nothing wrong with that. But to put the question to Peter after he has left the Wailers and in the context of, well, you're now number one and Bob is number two and the competition, he could have fallen for it, but he didn't. And I'm happy to see he didn't. And maybe in other occasions he did, but I'm so pleased to see how he handled that on that occasion. And then to really elevate the music and put the music ahead of everything. You know, I haven't said it in a while, but I oftentimes say about this reggae music that one of the things that distinguishes reggae music from most other popular music, and I should say roots reggae music, the thing that distinguishes roots reggae music in my mind from most of the popular music. Greetings, Sharif Ali. Thanks for tuning in. and for the comment. Most other popular music tends to be descriptive. You know, it talks about what's going on around. It's like the roving reporter. It's stories about, you know, this and that and the other. Roots reggae music, I contend, for the most part, and quite commonly, and more so than any other genre that I can think of, it's not merely descriptive, but it's also prescriptive. It comes with a prescription, a guidance as how to live your life. And, you know, Sharif, you need to come back in sometimes and be a part of this Natural Mystics edition of Real Talk, because Natural Mystics edition began actually a few years ago, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, when I was caught up in doing a production of Reggae Culture Salute, and our good brother sat in for me. Sajafu sat in, and all the reviews were wonderful about how the program went. I was in a rehearsal, didn't hear it, but I knew it was in good hands, and decided, you know what, once a month, why don't we do a program that looks at metaphysics? You know, look at the metaphysical side of the music, the natural mystics of it. And what Peter just shared with us right then and there was really a good demonstration of the natural mystics of not only reggae music, but the foundation from which it comes, Rastafari. And Sharif Ali says, Peter's response still holds true for all genres of music and artists. That was a deep response. Love it. Well, and I'm suggesting, my brother, and maybe I should have read your piece before I commented, but I'm suggesting that the response is in alignment with what this music, reggae music, is. It really was in alignment with what the music is. And Sharif says it holds true for all genres of music and artists. Well, I don't know, my brother. When we look at the big trial that just got done a while ago, you know the trial I'm speaking of, right? And Bongo Joe is not able to get in. I'm not sure what's going on with that. Did you get the link, Bongo Joe? Because if you got the link, I'm not sure why you would not be able to get in. Let me refresh and see what happens. Try again and see. I don't know. I hope you're using the link I sent you immediately before the show, because it would have to be that one. I indicated I would be sending you a link just before the show starts, so make sure you're looking at the correct link, Brother Bongo Joe. Greetings, Brother Omawale. I hope you caught the piece with Peter Tosh just now. It's the Natural Mystics edition, and as I just explained, it's the third Thursday of the month when we take a moment to kind of look at the metaphysical side of the music, the metaphysical side of life. And we just listen to, you know, let me do it one more time, because I believe it is so fitting as we celebrate his birthday. Peter was in an interview, and it went like this.
You started with Bob Marley. People in the press here say that you are now number one, he's number two. Do you feel competitive with him at all?
No, I am not here to be competitive, and the music, my father's music, is not for competition. Because if you go inside the Garden of Eden, there are many beautiful flowers. Each of them has a different color, and each of them is a different species, but they does not compete. See? So music should never compete, because it comes from the same divine mind. Jah is my health and my strength. So whom shall I fear? He's a shield upon my right and my left hand. So whom shall I be afraid? Jah is my king. Jah is my light and my salvation. So whom shall I fear? He's my guide throughout this creation. So whom shall I be afraid? Jah is my king.
Peter Tosh was murdered at his Kingston home, September 1987.
You start.
September 11th, 9/11, 1987. Tuesday, October 19th was his birthday. And so we're spending some time taking a look at him this evening. Not sure what happened with Bongo Joe and the link. We were supposed to have Bongo Joe joining us. Well, if the trial link is not going to get you in, you have to use the correct link if you want to get in on the correct program, my brother. It doesn't work like that. So, competition. You know, one of the songs that a lot of people associate with Bob Marley, of course, is a song that really speaks again to what I said earlier about the music being prescriptive and not just descriptive. One of the songs that Bob Marley is known for was actually recorded when Peter Tosh was a member of the Wailers and was actually written by Peter. And here's Peter doing his own version of the very popular Get Up, Stand Up.
Everybody up, 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 up. Dumb, deaf and blind, cripple. Get up, stand up. Stand up for your rights. Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight. No preacher man, don't tell me that heaven is on the earth. He's a ghost and he don't know what life is really worth. It's not all that glitter is gold, and half my history was never told. And now I see the light. I'm gonna rise up and stand up and say, get up, stand up, stand up for your rights. Everybody, get up, stand up. Don't give up. We've been down too long now. Get up, stand up. Stand up for your rights. the sky up there. Coming one day to take away everything and let this whole world try. But if you know what life is worth, then you would look for yours on earth. And any time you see the light, rise up and stand up and say, get up, stand up for your rights. Everybody, get up, stand up. Don't give up. We've been down too long now. Get up, stand up for your rights. Everybody, stand up. Don't give up the fight. We're sick and tired of this bullshit game. To die and go to heaven in Lord Jesus' name. We know and overstand. Rastafari is the only one. They fool some people sometimes, but the judge could not fool them all of this time. And any time you see the light, rise up and stand up and say, get up, stand up for your rights. Everybody, get up, stand up. Don't give up. We've been down too long now. Get up, stand up. Stand up for your rights. Everybody, stand up. Don't give up the fight.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Now listen, y'all. Like I said, the music is not just descriptive. It is prescriptive. The brethren said, get up, stand up for your right. Hymna gesta, all right? There's a clear prescription in this music, especially coming from the likes of Peter Tosh. I want to say greetings and welcome to Shaka Cousins, who says, my favorite whaler. I wish I had the ability. In fact, if anybody wants to give me a call and talk about Peter Tosh, let's see if the phones will work. The number is 347. I think you see it in front of you. 273-8131. 347-273-8131. Feel free to give me a call and say something about Peter. In fact, Shaka, why is Peter your favorite whaler? You know, lots of people say that, and in fact, I mentioned that in passing, speaking with my guest, my intended guest, who is apparently not making it due to him get on the wrong bus. Sorry, brethren, you take the wrong bus, the wrong train, the wrong whatever, end up in the wrong meeting. But I saw it go sometime. Yeah, but so many people talk about that. And in fact, I just talked about a comparison that was drawn between Bob and Peter. And a lot of people draw that comparison by drawing another comparison that is so often made, and perhaps no more reasonable than this one, but in comparing Bob and Peter, a lot of people point to Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. And speaking of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, we remembered Maurice Bishop on Peter's birthday on the 19th, on Tuesday. Maurice Bishop was assassinated on October 19th in 1983. I think of him when I mention Dr. King and El Hajj Malik, El Shabazz, Malcolm X, because those three brothers, Martin, Malcolm, and Maurice, 3 M's, all assassinated at the age of 39. Isn't that remarkable? The minute I thought about Martin and Malcolm, I kind of had to think about Maurice because of the anniversary of his assassination, and because all 3 of them, 3 powerful human beings, passed on, assassinated at age 39, never got to see their 40th birthday. And so the question of competition again comes into being, because in all of those 3 deaths, some serious competition did go on. Seeing some serious competition within the Nation of Islam, on one hand, within the nation of the United States of America, in the case of Martin Luther King, and within the nation of Grenada, in the case of Maurice Bishop. In fact, within the New Jewel movement, the party he was the leader of, which is how he got assassinated. And so that question that was asked of Peter about competition, and now that some in the media are saying he's number 1 and Bob is number 2, does he feel competition? That, yes, indeed. Samora Machel, in fact, the December 12th movement had a program on Tuesday remembering Maurice Bishop, Samora Machel, brother from Burkina Faso. They call them the Martyrs of October. Gaddafi, and of course, Maurice. Did I mention Maurice? Yes. So there were 5 Martyrs of October. Did I mention 5? I don't have them in front of me. But Shaka says they were all great, but I see Peter as more revolutionary. But the trio were brothers. Hey, that could be a whole nother conversation, because they were all revolutionary from my perspective, because the revolution is not one-dimensional. And when Peter said his father's music is not about competition, and in the Garden of Eden, there are all these various flowers of different colors, and they're all beautiful. In much the same way that Peter says they're all beautiful, is how I'm saying they're all revolutionary. Turns out some of them walked with folk who were counter-revolutionary, which is how come they got killed. If we're talking about, and when Peter said, when Shaka says the trio, I don't know if he's talking about Bob, Peter, and Bunny, or if he's talking about Maurice, Malcolm, and Martin. But 2 different trios. But in each of those 2 trios, each of them were indeed revolutionary. And that's why in this Natural Mystics edition, we take this moment to lift up Peter and look at the great contribution he made to the music. Let's see. Let's listen to some more music from Peter.
Jah created science and earth. He then created man of his own likeness and image. He gave unto man wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. He made man dominion over all things. Sitting in the morning sun, watching all them birds passing by. Oh, how sweet they sing. Oh, how much I wish that I could fly. And you know I tried. I said I tried. I tried. Try, but I got to pick myself up and dust myself off, and I had to start all over. Every time I start all over, I picked myself up and dust myself off, and I had to start all over. Every time I start all over, sitting in the midday sun, watching where my meal is coming from. After working so hard, not even piece of bread on the yard. And you know I tried. You can imagine how I tried. I tried this, and I did try, but I got to pick myself up and dust myself off, and I had to start all over. Every time I start all over, I pick myself up and dust myself off, and I had to start all over. Every time I start all over, sitting in the evening sun, watching them same birds passing by. I've been sitting and wondering, waiting for the time to fly. And you know I tried. You can imagine how I tried. I tried this, and I did try, but I got to pick myself up and dust myself off, and I had to start all over. Every time I start all over, pick myself off the ground, turn myself around, and start all over. Every time I start all over.
Yes, indeed. I got to pick myself up and get back on time. But you know, sometimes you enjoy the music so much, you get carried away. And in the chat room, let me just clarify some things. In the chat room, Omawale is reminding us that Thomas Sankara was assassinated on October 15th. Yes, the event was held on the 19th, which happens to be the date on which Maurice Bishop was assassinated. But the event was called Commemorating Martyrs of October, and the martyrs that were commemorated were Che Guevara, Thomas Sankara, Samora Machel, Maurice Bishop, and Muammar Gaddafi. So, yep, those were the ones who were celebrated or commemorated and celebrated on Tuesday evening. Of course, Bonga is saying Peter was 42. Peter was born in 44. And yes, 87 was just a few weeks before his birthday that he was gunned down at his home in Kingston. Now, by the way, speaking of Revolutionary Shaka, we saw the credits run on the musicians backing Peter Tosh, and they too must be credited with being revolutionary. I did make a note of a few of them. One of them, I just can't remember his name, so I'll start with him. The guitar player, 51 years ago in 1970, was a founding member of Fab Five. And you saw him there with Peter Tosh. For some reason, I'm drawing a blank on his name. But we also saw Fully Fullwood, who, veteran bass player, Keith Sterling, brother of Lester Sterling, on keyboards, Carlton Santa Davis on drums, and dear friend of mine I had the opportunity of working with Max Romeo, Vision Walker. Now Vision, it should be known, and we saw him singing, I don't know if you saw him in that, but Vision, when Bob Marley left the Wailers for a minute in the early days, went up to Delaware, where he sang about, working on the night shift with the forklift. Yeah, that song. When he worked in the factory and then returned and rejoined the Wailers. Well, when Bob left, it was Vision who filled in for Bob in the Wailers. Vision happens to be the cousin of Rita Marley. And so, just to say that all of these brothers you saw on stage are indeed the revolutionaries who shaped this music that we're celebrating today. So we're not going to just celebrate the front man, but we celebrate all of them. And you saw Peter reach back, and take Vision along with him. This was, it was in the early 80s that I was working with Vision, with Max. This was done after that. So yeah, some revolutionary folk, and you can't just remember Peter by himself. You have to remember Peter with so many others. I have one last clip of Peter as we close the hour out that I want to share. Because, by the way, I want to go back to the first. Wow. Mystic Man. Did I do Mystic Man? Yeah. I think I did. Maybe I didn't. Well, let's try this.
mystic man.
Such a mystic man.
I'm just a mystic man.
Mystic man.
I'm a dope.
I'm a dope. I'm a dope.
I don't drink no champagne.
Don't drink no champagne.
No, I don't. And I'm a dope.
I'm a dope.
No,
I'm a dope.
I don't sniff them cocaine.
Don't sniff no
Choke brain. I'm a dope.
I'm a dope.
No, I don't.
I'm a dope.
Don't take a morphine.
Don't take no morphine.
Dangerous. I'm a dope.
I'm a dope. I'm a dope.
I don't take no heroin.
Don't take no
No, no, no. 'Cause I'm a man of the past and I'm living in the present and I'm walking in the future, stepping in the future. Man of the past and I'm living in the present and I'm walking. I'm just a mystic man.
Such a mystic man.
Got to be a mystic man.
Mystic man.
I'm a dope.
I'm a dope. I'm a dope.
Eat up your fried chicken.
Pick up your fried chicken.
Not licking. I'm a dope.
I'm a dope. I'm a dope.
Eat up them frankfurters.
Pick up your Frankfurt.
Garbage. I'm a dope.
I'm a dope. I'm a dope.
Eat down the hamburger.
Pick up
Can't do that. I'm a dope.
I'm a dope. I'm a dope.
Drink pink, blue, yellow, green soda.
Soda pop. Soda pop.
'Cause I'm a man of the past and I'm living in the present and I'm walking in the future, stepping in the future. Man of the past and I'm living in the present and I'm walking, keep on walking. Just a mystic man.
Ah, boy, I tell you, such a mystic man. I am sleeping on the job again. Actually, I was checking out the comments in the chat room, and I want to thank you, Bongo Joe, for reminding me about Donald Kinsey, brother from the Midwest, who again speaks to another dimension of the mysticism of this music. I was so busy trying to remember Stevie Golden, and not one of the Cooper brothers. In fact, it was Grub Cooper, the drummer, who got me involved with that particular group, just observing them before they even were named Fab Five. They would be the Broncos because they played at this club called the Broncos. But Grub was a drummer. Conroy was the keyboard player. But Stevie Golden is the guitar player. I was trying to remember the rhythm guitar player with Peter at that time. And Donald Kinsey, a very talented guitar player from the Midwest, that spoke to something that Bob did, and you saw others do it, in terms of bringing in, I always say that Bob, a part of Bob's genius was to bring in a blues guitar player a guitar player who plays not necessarily blues music, but his playing is rooted in the blues scale. I don't want to get too technical, but there are different kinds of scales in music, and solo work is rooted in different scales and progressions. And Donald Kinsey, coming out of I believe Chicago, where the blues is. I remember going out to a nightclub in Chicago one evening. I was out there, and the blues was just, you don't hear that blues on record. You have to go into those clubs to hear the real blues. And I can tell that Donald Kinsey came out of that tradition, as did the guitar player Bob had brother out of New Jersey, had doing his lead work early in the year. And Bongo says Donald Kinsey's background is blues. Yeah, the whole notion of making this music appeal to certain intrinsic things within us is the only way I can put it. It was a stroke of genius, I thought, to kind of infuse the blues. So when we talk about reggae coming out of Jamaica, it is not to suggest that every aspect of it is Jamaican. Jamaica was the crucible in which the formulation took place, just like the internet is all over the world, but it was the United States Army that developed the internet. Never mind all those people who are claiming to have created the internet. It was your tax dollars, and it was the United States Army that developed the internet. It's the same thing. It was these brothers, Grub Cooper and Conroy Cooper and all of them. Vision. For years, vision is also called dream. And for years, I never made the connection. Some people call him dream, and some people call him vision. And, well, a vision is a dream, isn't it? For years, I didn't make that connection. I just chose to call him vision and didn't think about why other people were calling him dream. But that's just a little side note. Speaking of visions, though, and dreams, I am dreaming that you will all join us here on Tuesday, November the 2nd, the 91st, I believe, anniversary of the coronation of His Imperial Majesty. Boy, we're getting to the century 2030 coming. But we're going to be actually taking a look at women, and not just women, but a woman, the Empress Menen, and her embodiment of African womanhood. So please mark your calendar and spread the word as much as you can, and do plan to join us on the 2nd of November, the actual anniversary of the coronation, when we will have a very special guest to join us to talk about Empress Menen. And just to tell you a little bit about our guest, so you get a sense of the pedigree we are dealing with. Seeing? Yes, indeed. Sister Asantewaa is the founding editor of the journal Empress Menen Chronicles. She's also the founder of Empress Menen Day in Chicago. The aim of her research is to expand what is known about the Empress, thus enabling the seeker to realize the feminine divine in Rastafari. Let me repeat. The aim of her research is to expand what is known about the Empress, thus enabling the seeker, hopefully that will be you, to realize the feminine divine in Rastafari. Sister Asantewaa is a professor of history. She lives in Chicago, back to Chicago again, with her husband and their 4 children. And just to put in context the Empress Menen Chronicles, Empress Menen Chronicles is a research-based, historical, cultural, peer-reviewed journal. Let me repeat, research-based. I don't know, I think, I wonder, me feel, no. Research-based, historical, and remember, she's a historian, cultural, and then peer-reviewed. Again, speaking about that working together to make things work. This is not just her doing this by herself, but it's peer-reviewed. That's the kind of journal you want to be reading if you want to be speaking authoritatively about things African, and in this case, Empress Menen. The editors are always seeking research-based articles on the global African woman's experience, with specific attention to Empress Menen and women of the Ethiopian royal family. Brothers and sisters, do not miss November 2nd. I know for some here in New York, it's an election. Gonna go vote early and come in and sit in 7 o'clock, make we reason about Empress Menen. We'll also be looking at the emperor, we always do. And just to remind you that Reggae Culture Salute, which is how CPR got started, was an event that wanted to look at that unique relationship, that organic relationship. And as we talk about Fab Five and Donald Kinsey, it's just an organic relationship between the musicians. And it is that organic relationship between reggae, Rastafari, Empress Selassie, and Empress Menen, and Jamaica. And of course, Empress Selassie, Empress Menen are really representing Africa in this equation. And so there's that organic relationship between reggae, Rasta, Empress Selassie, and Jamaica. And it is that relationship that drove us to develop and stage the first Reggae Culture Salute on the 75th anniversary of the coronation. That was in 2005. And we invite you to join us in this virtual get-together. You know the pandemic are going, right? So we're doing it virtual this year on the actual anniversary of the coronation, November 7th at November 2nd at 7. November 2nd at 7 o'clock. So please do plan to join us for that on that occasion. You know what? Let's do this and then we'll come back and forward into some other things. Because at the end of the day, I am sick. How so?
Music is psychology, see? And if the music does not penetrate the heart, the soul, and the mind, and the body, then you ain't gonna feel it. Because reggae music is not something that you hear, it's something you feel. See? And if you don't feel it, you can't know it. See? It is a spiritual music with spiritual ingredients for spiritual purposes.
Was an unusual feeling in my bone, yeah. It's in my blood, in my toes, coming up to my brain. Went to the doctor to check out what's matter. I went to the doctor to find out the matter. Doctor said, son, you have a reggae myelitis. I said, what? Doctor said, son, have a reggae my life. In a me bone, yeah. In a me blood, yeah. From my toes, yeah, up to my brain, yeah. Is it contagious? Is it outrageous? Is it vicious? Or is it dangerous? I can feel it in my bone, yeah. In my ankle, yeah. From my toes, yeah, up to my brain, yeah. Is it incurable? It's fit for desirable. It is incurable. Fit for desirable. I have it in my toes, in my ankle, in my knees, up to my waist, under my ribs, across my shoulder, in my finger, up to my brain. Reggae my life is, I say. It's reggae my life is, I say. You only catch it one way. It's reggae my life is, I say. Sometimes your temperature, it really gets higher, and the music set your soul on fire. I got it in my toes, in my knees, in my ankle, in my waist, in my heart, in my soul, in my mind, coming through my mouth, in my finger, registered in my brain. Reggae my life.
Yes, I'm sick, and I acknowledge I'm sick, and I hope y'all are sick too. I hope y'all have a case of the reggae-myelitis in my bone, in my finger, in my blood. Seeing? Reggae-myelitis. It's a good sickness to have. Go get yourself get yourself sick with reggae myelitis. And there's a request I'm going to honor in the chat room, because we did, have it played, but as a piece of something earlier. But you know what? It deserves the space. So we're going to give it the space,
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Jah, and the Word was Jah. In the beginning Jah created the heaven and the earth, then created man of his own likeness, gave unto man wisdom, knowledge, understanding.
Jah is my help and my strength, so whom shall I fear? He's a shield upon my right and my left hand, so whom shall I be afraid? Jah is my king, Jah is my light and my salvation, so whom shall I fear? He's my guide throughout this creation, so whom shall I be afraid? Jah is my king, Jah is my guide in my resting and my rising, so whom shall I fear? He's my guide when I step out in the forwarding, so whom shall I be afraid? Jah is my king, Jah is my guide when the Philistines come down upon me, so whom shall I fear? He's my guide when my enemies come to devour, so whom shall I be afraid? Jah is my king, from the pestilence of darkness, so whom shall I fear? He's my guide from the vampire of hell, so whom shall I be afraid?
Jah is my king. is my health and my strength. So whom shall I fear? He's a shield upon my right and my left hand. So whom shall I be afraid? Jah is my
Yes, Rooster. 3 times, see? Indeed, indeed, indeed. Jah is my keeper. And as we shift gears and actually get to a piece for the remainder of the program that begins with a look at, well, it's got some religious connections. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that this particular track, this song from Peter Tosh, this great music, as Everett says, is actually officially in the Anglican hymn book. Yes, they decided to go through whatever process they go through to induct this particular piece, arrangement, composition of Peter Tosh, and it's now a part of the Anglican hymn book. The Anglican, for those of you who may not know, is the same thing as the Episcopal Church in this country, or the Church of England in England. And Peter Tosh's creation is an official part of that hymnal. We'll take a break and come back and change gears. I want to thank all of you for the engagement in the chat room. Let's see. Well, Bonga says kind of played all the way to the end until the rooster crows. I didn't even see that. I'm glad I didn't disappoint. But to play that, I had to cover up the chat room, so I couldn't see, which is why I'm just now catching up on what folk were saying in the chat room. But let me do this. This might also help me to catch up, and then I'll come back and we'll reason.
A coalition to preserve reggae music. Preserve reggae music. Reggae music is alive. CPR will preserve reggae music. Sing it. Preserve reggae music. Reggae music is live. Reggae music is live.
This a one a real epidemic. Everybody get hooked on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Well, this is Tasha T, and right now the world is in a turmoil. So do remember to take the necessary precautions. Wash your hands properly before touching anything or anyone. So please be responsible. Tasha T said that. One love.
This is Lucian the Messenger, inviting you to support CPR, the coalition to preserve reggae and keep roots reggae music alive. CPR is a non-profit organization. Come and be a part of this. It's a wonderful celebration. Give praise to Rastafari. For more information, call 718-421-6927. That's 718-421-6927.
Yes, indeed. give us a call. But more importantly, be a part of Reggae Culture Salute 2021 when we celebrate and recognize Empress Menen, this very, I don't even know the word, but this very gifted sister, Sister Santawa, will be joining us to share with us about Empress Menen and her embodiment of African womanhood. So please join us for Reggae Culture Salute 2021 right here on CPR Live. And, I don't know, it's going to take a lot of work. We began at the top of the hour with a interviewer baiting Peter Tosh, telling him that, well, some think he's number one and Bob is number two, and there's competition. And Peter very beautifully said, look at the Garden of Eden, all the flowers, they each have their beauty, no competition. And we talk about the collaboration and the working together to make things work. And still Everett wants to know, is this reggae music or just great Jamaican music or just great music? Brethren, it is all of the above. There is no or. It is what it is. It's great music. It's Jamaican music. It's reggae music. Make we allow the competition thing and just put with the fun and till things take a turn then me. You know that tune? Yeah. Wow. Bongo Joe says, give thanks, brethren. That's a great song. Okay. So it's reggae music, great Jamaican music, a great song, all of the above. Like Peter said, the Father's music, and then a joke thing. So, it is Natural Mystics, and I want to thank folks for sharing material with me, which help me to know what's on your mind and help me to prepare programming. This particular discussion we're about to have is a result of a piece that I received. And actually, now there's another piece that I don't have. I do apologize for that. Before I do that, let me see. Bongo Joe is saying that the Anglican Church in Jamaica has been defending its plans to include lyrics from renowned singers Bob Marley and Peter Tosh is in its hymnal. The first two songs to be listed are Marley's One Love and Tosh's Creation. His take on Psalm 27, he says. So we just heard Creation, and so yes, and I did mention it being in the Anglican hymn book. And thanks for the filling in some blanks there, Bongo Joe. Now this piece is an opinion from Elisha Wiesel. And it says, the church is honoring my father, Elie Wiesel, and his legacy includes unapologetic Zionism. Now, y'all gonna have to help me figure this out. I'm not a big church person, and I don't really too know about Zionism either. But this is an interesting piece, and I think we can plow through it together. So I ask your indulgence and ask you to provide, as you're doing in the chat room, assist. What would my father have thought of being carved into a church? Today, a likeness of my father, author, activist, and Holocaust survivor, Elie Wiesel, is being unveiled in the stonework of the Washington National Cathedral. My father and I are deeply grateful to Dean Randy Hollerith and all the leadership at the cathedral for this profound measure of respect. It is good to see that 5 years after his passing, my father is still being recognized for his global work for human rights and his singular message of hope amid darkness. But I wrestled with this honor, and I think he would have done the same. I feared disconnecting my father from his Jewish identity. Thankfully, clergy not only supported, but were passionate about presenting my father during the unveiling as an observant Jew. They even introduced a blemish into the carving to address our concerns with the biblical injunction against graven images. And I feared letting others articulate his legacy when I saw it so often incompletely presented, or worse, misunderstood. My father taught us that language matters, but many grew lazy with it, or twist the most consequential words into attacks. I see people quote my father's admonition against silence in the face of oppression as they scream at others with contempt, self-righteousness, and anger. I remind them that he never humiliated or ridiculed. But the hardest thing for me is when I come across people who invoke his protests, read his books, and cry for the dead Jews, then condemn in unforgiving terms the 6 million Jews living in Israel who refuse to depend ever again on others to rescue them. So I remind the world that my father didn't advocate just for the people of Kosovo, Darfur, and Cambodia. He also supported Israel and defended her right to exist in peace and security. My father understood what it meant to live in the world without a Jewish state. And he saw the anti-Zionist movement for what it was, an extension of millennia-old anti-Semitism, which unfortunately is becoming more common and acceptable today. In a 1975 speech, he thundered, "They tell us that they are not against Jews, only against Zionists. Well, too bad. I shall not permit the enemy to define my identity for me. I will not allow him to tell me who I am." The Nazis too wanted that prerogative. I shall not allow anyone, and surely not my enemy, to decide for me who is and who is not my enemy. Let me pause right there, and then we'll get to the Zionism piece, because I think it is really useful that we reason a little bit about this. You know, in this time from August through to the beginning of November, we focus on that organic relationship between reggae, Rasta, Emperor Selassie, and Jamaica. And I've always said that I understand Rastafari as an anti-establishment movement. Recently, my co-host suggested that, well, if Rasta is anti-establishment, then they should whatever. I told him he was offensive, that I took offense to that kind of notion. And I spoke about, just 2 days ago, or was it last week, the right to self-determination. And he came back at me asking me about transgender and, you know. But I'm reminded by Shakespeare that the devil will cite scripture for its own purpose. Yes, indeed, I am about the right to self-determination, unapologetically. And apparently, so too was Elie Wiesel. And so too is the Rastafari movement. And we really have to understand it for what it is, and the nexus between Rastafari and reggae. Shaka says Zionism and apartheid are settler colonialism. And like I said, we will get to that in a minute. But I did want to just pause to acknowledge the right to self-determination. And I really hope that we would be more serious about the right to self-determination. You know, I'm coming to the conclusion. A lot of Pan-Africanists, for want of a better term, a lot of Pan-Africanists point to Dr. Walter Rodney. And when they point to Dr. Walter Rodney, they quickly point to his book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. And just as the young Wiesel was comparing and contrasting behaviors, when I look at some of the behaviors of some of my Pan-Africanist brothers and sisters, and the way in which they feel and laud Walter Rodney, I wonder sometimes if they also read his other book, which, you know, anyone who wants to become a naturalized American must do a test and demonstrate that they have, you know, mastery of certain basic information. I feel the same way about people claiming to be Pan-Africanist. That there should be a test. And one of the texts for that test, as you know, they provide study for the citizenship. One of the texts that folks should be required to show some mastery of is not so much Walter Rodney's How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, but the grounding with my brother. You see, Dr. Rodney, for those of you who don't know, was a very brilliant scholar. And Dr. Rodney, a Guyanese, who also, if I'm not mistaken, didn't make it to see 40 years. He too was assassinated. I believe the month would be June. I know that Bongo Joe is going to tell me what month, perhaps even the day that Dr. Walter Rodney was assassinated. But I first became aware of Dr. Walter Rodney in 1968 when he was returning to Jamaica from a trip overseas. Dr. Walter Rodney taught at the University of the West Indies in Jamaica. He was returning to Jamaica and was barred from entering the country, was declared persona non grata by Hugh Shearer, the then Prime Minister. And it caused a big, protest by students at the University of the West Indies. And I've, been curious, for want of a better word, about Dr. Walter Rodney ever since. But Dr. Walter Rodney didn't just speak and teach and read and study Pan-Africanism. As a lecturer at the University of the West Indies, he could have been quite comfortable up in Mona or on the campus or wherever he lived. He could have been quite comfortable going from home to work, from home to work. But Dr. Walter Rodney is known for going into the gullies. And let me explain what the gullies are. If you ever listen to Bunny Wailer's Blackheart Man, you'll hear him sing. He says he lives in the gullies and the whatever. Well, the gully in Kingston is a part of the sewerage system where the water from the street, not the sewer from your house or anything like that, but the water from the street, runs off into these man-made, almost rivers they call gullies. You can actually, it's huge. It's wide like a street in some places. I used to have to walk through one because it was too expensive to build a bridge to go over it. And, there wasn't water running all the time. So this particular gully, the cars went down, or in my case, I was walking, going to steel band practice. The cars went down through the gully and back up. And when you look up the gully, you see abandoned cars, you see people pitching makeshift housing and all of that in the gully. Walter Rodney was known to spend time, June 13th, Bongo says. Thank you, Bongo. That's the date Dr. Walter Rodney was assassinated in his home, Guyana. Dr. Walter Rodney could have been comfortable up on the campus researching and writing books and doing whatever. But he was known for going into the gully and reasoning with the folk, the Rastaman, the sufferer in the gully. And it was out of that experience of making it his duty to understand the life of people that he would write about, that he would write the book, The Grounding with My Brothers. And so I would suggest this to be required reading for anyone who wants to claim to be Pan-Africanist. My good brethren, well, I won't go there, but the doctrine of Kawaida is what Kwanzaa is based on. And perhaps the simplest expression of that doctrine is tradition and reason. It comes down to three words, tradition and reason. But the explanation, it's like Sankofa or like all of the Adinkra symbols. They're very simple. Sankofa, go back and fetch it, is how we look at that bird with the head turned back. But the explanation is that there is no shame in going back and claiming that which you have left behind and using it to move forward. Go back and fetch. Well, Kawaida is about tradition and reason. But the longer explanation says that all that we do should be rooted in tradition, but we should apply reason to that tradition, whatever the traditions that we're leaning upon. And it's only a fool that leans upon his own misunderstanding. But whatever tradition we're working with, we must also be prudent to apply reason to it, to take the good and discard the bad, But what is not captured in the expression tradition and reason is the final dimension of kawaida, which is then reflected in practice. What is your practice? Not what you say, but what you do. Dr. Walter Rodney walked the walk. And so when he wrote the book, Grounding with My Brothers, it was not based on speculation or anything other than, well, it was definitely inclusive of experience, his practice of going down in the gully and reason with among them. The music of that time, and remember when Dr. Walter Rodney was being kicked out of Jamaica in 68, that was about the time that reggae music was emerging. And a part of the emergence of that music was the practice of reasoning. Mana reason, seeing, and out of the reasonings and discussions would come the music that would, as I say, be prescriptive and not just descriptive. The music would prescribe. It wasn't always perfect, but it was rooted in that practice of reasoning. Okay, reasoning. So, make we reason a little bit. Because the piece goes on to say, today my father is being honored as a friend of the church, but as a child, he would cross the street to avoid one, and the beatings from the worshippers within. On Christmas Eve, he knew to stay off the street altogether. My great-grandfather sang him mournful songs about Jewish communities decimated over outrageous lies that they murdered Christian children to make matzah with their blood. How do I help our Christian friends understand that the Jewish people still face blood libels today? We're going to reason, Accusers throw the word apartheid as Israel, ignoring that thousands of Arabs serve voluntarily in the Israel Defense Forces and take their oath on a Quran or New Testament, ignoring that this year an Arab political party was kingmaker in forming the Israeli government. Some celebrities charge Israel with ethnic cleansing, disregarding that as of 2017, the population of Palestine citizens in Israel is more than 9 times as high as it was in 1948. Meanwhile, almost all states in the Arab Middle East are Judean reign, cleansed of Jews. All right, so I could reason a little bit about where we are so far. Again, we get into this either or type of reasoning. Throw the word apartheid at Israel, ignoring that thousands of Arabs serve voluntarily in the Israel Defense Forces. What does that say about, again, practice? What does that say about Israel's practice towards the Palestinians on a daily basis? Tradition and reason, which must be rooted in practice. So accusers throw the word apartheid at Israel, ignoring that thousands of Arabs serve voluntarily in the Israel Defense Force. And so holding up, what is, let me find it, holding up the folk in the army as evidence that what? That the apartheid practices don't exist, as if one should believe that they cannot coexist. No. It is great that the church would do what the church has done, but I find it interesting that even after the church did what the church did, Alicia Wiesel is using that as the basis for presenting this argument about Israel and Zionism, and accusers throwing words and that sort of a thing. Some celebrities charge Israel with ethnic cleansing, he says. American right-wing extremists shoot us with assault rifles in synagogues, while reactionary preachers express fury at our support of immigrants and people of color. Reactionary preachers express fury at our support of immigrants and people of color. Okay then. For our allyship, they see us as prisoners, as poisoning the wells of, For our allyship, they see us as poisoning the wells of white America. At the same time, elements of Christian left condemn Israel in vitriolic terms without a trace of compassion for the Israeli people facing violence and terrorism. The United Church of Christ's denunciation didn't even mention Hamas. Bongo Joe says, a growling belly would drive you to serve involuntarily. The belly full, but we hungry. A hungry man is a complicit man. Is that the idea, Bongo Joe? Yes, a hungry man is an angry man too, they say. Last year, left-wing extremists spread lies. Now, this dude is hurting, it seems. Last year, left-wing extremists spread lies that Israel trained George Floyd's murderer. You know, it reminds me of the South African doctor who testified for the defense in the trial. How, well, why would they choose a South African doctor? Why would they have a South African to defend the police who murdered George Floyd? What was that about? It just goes to show. A growling belly would drive you to serve involuntarily. It says Bongo. How do I get well-intentioned people, he says, to recognize that if they find themselves in any movement that tolerates lies and hatred towards the world's only Jewish state, unless they can challenge and remove the anti-Semitic poison, that place is not their place. My father's generation was blessed with Christian allies, such as the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., who rejected the anti-Israeli sentiment that threatened to infect his movement. perhaps our next generation of allies will come from those who walk through the doors of the Washington National Cathedral and are inspired to ask questions about my father's presence there. So, I'm going to jump in and make me hear what I have to say. But as you jump in the chat room and let me hear what you have to say, I'll just share with you some insights. Zionism, a movement originally for the resettlement and now the development and protection of a Jewish nation in what is now Israel. It was established as a political organization in 1897 under Theodore Herzl and was later led by Chaim Weizmann. Now, okay, but the Webster Dictionary tells us that it is an international movement originally for the establishment of a Jewish nation or religious community in Palestine, and later for the support of modern Israel. Now, in 1492, Columbus sailed the seas and came over here and discovered the New World, as they put it. But even now, we have to acknowledge there were people here. They came before Columbus, is how one writer puts it in a mammoth work. But are we to understand that Palestine was vacant land when the nation of Israel was established? What is the definition of Zionism in geography? This says, Zionism, Jewish nationalist movement that has had as its goal the creation and support of a Jewish nation, a Jewish national state in Palestine, the ancient homeland of the Jews. Hebrew, Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. So, how do you holler and cry and all of that about people when the history is there? The history is there. And hey, tradition and reason. We have a reason. And this writer seems to not think it necessary to reason, but to simply throw up opposing concepts and act as if the entire world is aligned against the Jews. Opposing Zionism is not about opposing Jews. Opposing apartheid was not necessarily about opposing the Boers in South Africa either. It is the system of apartheid. It is a systemic degradation of others that is inherent in the notion of Zionism, moving people off their land into settlements so you could have it. And the world is supposed to be good with that. You know, when I looked at this reference to this, the political organization of 1897, I couldn't help but think about 1884. But before I get to 1884, let's see what folk are saying in the chat room. Everett says, my sentiment exactly. Shaka says, read the book Wise Men and Smut. It shows you the relationship between Israel and South Africa. Well, Ivan van Sertima, they came before Columbus. Yes, the Guyanese scholar, Ivan van Sertima, they came before Columbus. 1884, and it ties back to Rastafari, brothers and sisters, is what I'm talking about. 1884, the Berlin Conference was convened to discuss African colonization. Okay, so while 1884, they're gathering in Berlin to carve up Africa. Meanwhile, the designs are being laid to remove the Palestinians off of Palestine. Convened to discuss African colonization with the aim of setting up international guidelines for making claims to African land to avoid conflict between European powers. Let me repeat. Convened to discuss African colonization with the aim of setting up international guidelines for making claims to African land to avoid conflict between European powers. In other words, they gathered in Berlin between 84 and 85 and deliberated among themselves. How are we going to avoid what happened in the Caribbean, where the Spanish held Jamaica, and then the British came and fought the Spanish and took over Jamaica? Or the French were in St. Lucia, and then the changing of hands took place as European powers fought against one another to set up colonies. It must be that they learned something from the colonization experience in the Caribbean in the 17th and 18th century, so that by the end of the 19th century, they're saying, before we go into Africa, let us sit down and figure out how we pursue, let us set up some guidelines for making claims of African land and yet avoid conflict between European powers. And so when I say Rastafari is an anti-establishment movement, as Rastafari pursues repatriation and reparations, to suggest that, well, if Rastafari is anti-establishment, then, you know, they deserve what they got coming to them, sort of argument. How do we model, copy, if you will, the Europeans and convene a Pan-African conference to talk about how we not step on each other as we pursue what we are pursuing? Everett says, that sounds like the USA and Russia currently discussing Antarctica. It's what they do. It's what monopoly capitalism does. It's what the New World Order has been time and time again. A new order every time it is found to be convenient. And yes, we will be talking about the New World Order in an upcoming program. Thanks again to members of the audience who have provided the impetus, the information to do that. Just as this piece was provided to me by a member of the audience. We have to look at this. And this natural mystics looking, reasoning, and this movement towards celebrating the 1930 coronation, and this examination of African womanhood, this examination of our peoplehood, this notion, for instance, that people of African ancestry cannot be racist. And so they go in the employ of the designers of the Berlin Conference and work in their employ. You know, I remember when Bill Clinton went into office and his, oh man, what was Ron, can't think of his last name right now, Ronald, it'll come back to me, but developed what is known as AGOA, AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunity Act. And what the African Growth and Opportunity Act did was develop this scheme to go into Africa and tell Africans, for instance, where textile is concerned, don't do the finished product. You do the basic stuff and we will do the finishing over here. It's really what happened in the Caribbean when we were cutting cane and sending it to Europe, or bauxite was exploited, but we would never be allowed to. There were always reasons why we couldn't make alumina or aluminium. We had to export it to be refined in Canada or someplace else. The practice continues. And Shaka says, one thing we must understand is that Judaism, like all religions, pick up convert all over the world. Because people criticize Israel, that does not mean that they are anti-Semite. We must see if the criticism is valid. It's interesting that you were putting that in the chat room at the same time that I was suggesting that capitalism picks up converts all over the world. And in the interest of capitalism, we do dastardly deeds against each other. In fact, it says here that modern Zionism emerged in the late 19th century in Central and Eastern Europe as a national revival movement, both in reaction to newer waves of anti-Semitism and as a response to Hashkalah, or Jewish Enlightenment. Soon after this, most leaders of the movement associated the main goal with creating the desired state of Palestine, an area controlled by the Ottoman Empire. Now, who would be the Ottoman Empire? So, you move in, you do a movement to take over an area controlled essentially by, would that be Iran? And you wonder why Iran takes the position it takes against Israel today. Zionism posited a negation of Jewish life in the diaspora. And until 1948, perceived its primary goal as an ideal ingathering of exiles in the ancient heartland of the Jewish people, and through the establishment of a state, the liberation of Jews from the persecutions, humiliation, discrimination, and anti-Semitism they had been subject to. Since the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, Zionism has continued primarily to advocate on behalf of Israel and to address threats to the continued existence and security. Can anybody understand why Iran would say, we ain't giving up that land? Yeah? Would anybody understand why SWAPO, the Southwest African People's Organization, would fight to liberate that area of Africa until they did? And why the folk in the Congo continue to this day, and why in just so many places in Africa, the struggle is on to reclaim their territory. And in the diaspora, as in Africa, the struggle is on to reclaim our minds. Because we be out of our African minds half of the time. Okay? We are out of our African minds. Did I say half? More like 90% of the time. And this Jewish mind that equates Zionism with being Jewish, well, there certainly are questions to be answered. A religious variety of Zionism supports Jews upholding their identity defined as adherence to religious Judaism opposed to assimilation. Where's the rest of this? As opposed to assimilation of Jews into other societies, and has advocated the return of Jews to Israel as a means of Jews to be a majority nation in their own state. Rastafari isn't looking to expropriate anybody's land. Rastafari simply says repatriation. Marcus Garvey said repatriation. Not to stolen land, not to land that is decided upon by folk outside of the land, in much the way that Europe gathered in Berlin in 1884 to do the Berlin Conference to divide up Africa. We have to, I contend, begin the process of reclaiming our African mind. But in doing so, we have to be careful not to mimic the fear and cowardice that is reflected in this piece, in the way it expresses this defense of Zionism, which is really indefensible. It's no more defensible than the eradication of the Arawak Indians and the other Taino peoples when Columbus came to Jamaica. It's indefensible. And to see it, not only in the 16th century, but here we are in the 21st century. And the Palestinians are on the fringes of their land, like the folk that Donald Trump had in cages south of the American border. In South Africa, the Carter administration pushed that the African group should take political power, but leave the economic power in the hands of Europeans. This we call neocolonialism. What do we do? What do we do? I'm going to take a little break and come back. And we can talk about what do we do.
What we want. We want to love ourselves freely. Unfettered images of our grandmothers in our dreams. We want to praise our own God. And we want to see his reflection in our children's eyes. We want to draw him blue like jazz with long dreads and thick lips. We want music every day and especially on Sunday. We want dancing to be a prerequisite for success. We want the blues and jazz and funk, rock, soul, hip hop and R&B and the wealth created from it to be our baby's inheritance. And we want it taught in all elementary schools all over the world. We want to speak for ourselves, we want to represent ourselves, and we don't want no handouts. Yeah, we don't want handouts. We just want everything we created and everything that was created as a result of what we created, and we want it with interest. We need a guaranteed income for all, education like fresh air and food and water and shelter, and be free from sickness and dis-ease. We need long life to collectively oppose death and stagnation. We need ideas and imagination. We should be against hoods like sheeted white ones, the ones that take and keep taking from the meek and often defenseless, even the glorified trap. Yeah, we against the trap too. We need our skies to be free from poison, to be able to breathe in sunshine and feel the wind on our faces. We need to end the war and oppression. We need the people to own their own labor. We need every corner of every country developed and every community empowered. We need it all turned right side up. We need the raw materials from the earth used to end poverty anywhere it exists. We need the calluses on our hands and the pains in our lower back to be added to our savings. Yeah. We need healthcare to be free, and information to be free, and ideas to be free, and the news to be free, and learning to be free, and the people to be free. Yeah, the people, they gotta be free too. We need to end slavery in all forms and end exploitation, and we need all the money and all the banks in every part of the world to be used for our collective benefit. Yeah, we need all the money and all the banks in every part of the world to be used for our collective benefit. We need to outlaw lies and teach people's history in all languages from the viewpoint of all of us, not just a few of us. We need to outlaw everyone. We need to outlaw everyone. We need to outlaw everyone who opposes the right for all of us to vote, to be represented, no matter where we are, no matter what language we speak, no matter what God we pray to dismantle the Electoral College. Yeah, we need to dismantle the Electoral College and make racism and white supremacy illegal. We need to ban the Confederate flag and label every monument to genocide with a red letter like that book, or just plain tear them down. and replace them with statues of black and brown women that carried us through the darkest moments of history. We need to destroy all nuclear weapons, but first start with automatic rifles. We need to replace the war on drugs with a war on ignorance. We need to destroy the pipeline of cages and use the savings to develop the human spirit, to treat illness, social, mental, and physical. We need freedom. Not just the Bill of Rights, but rights to build our own lives, to be free from destituteness and hatred and hungry children, free from sickness with cures, underdevelopment and cold winter nights with no heat, free from losing our land, our block, our community, our homes, our family, free from choking to death in our own backyard. And schools that undermine our self-esteem, we need to be free from praising those that lynched us. We need to be free from praising those that lynched us, and free to pray in any language and to anyone we choose. Free to be free how we define it. We need to be free how we define it, and free enough to know that the world is made up of all of us, not just some of us, and that only when all of us are free, none of us will be. And that our collective existence is tied directly to our individual existence, a coexistence with ourselves. Yeah, one big we, one big we, one big giant outrageous we. This is what we want and what we need. This is what we want and what we need, what we want and what we need, and we want it now. We want it now at this very moment, this second. This is what we want and what we need, the now, the now, the now and the forever and the now and the forever and the now, the forever now. We want it, we want it, we want it, what we want and what we need, what we want and what we need, what we need and want and need and need and want and need, like a shower all over our body, like a shower all over our body. We want it. Like the sunshine kissing our faces. Yeah, like the sunshine kissing our faces.
All we got is each other, and we must reserve it, a fighting chance, and the kids deserve it. We come together, serve a bigger purpose, yeah, 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 yeah. All we got is each other, and we must reserve it, a fighting chance, and the kids deserve it. We come together, serve a bigger purpose, yeah, yeah, yeah,
What we want, what we need. Ras Baraka, the mayor of Newark, New Jersey, the son of Imam Amiri Baraka. Yes, indeed, what we want and what we need. The question must be asked. The question must be asked as we move towards the anniversary of the coronation. The question must be asked, what message is the church sending by chiseling a Zionist in its walls? I don't know the answer, and I'm curious if folk out there would suggest to me what the answer is. But is there a message in this installation? Ella Wiesel, unavowed Zionist, carved in the Christian church. What message should we take from that? Advocates of Zionism view it as a national liberation movement for reparation, it's almost laughable, of a persecuted people residing as minorities in a variety of nations to their ancestral homeland. I'm sorry, I said reparation. Let me repeat that, because I confuse these words from time to time, and as many of us do. Advocates of Zionism view it as a national liberation movement for the repatriation of a persecuted people residing as minorities in a variety of nations to their ancestral homeland. At the same time, Africans who live on their ancestral homelands are persecuted. The Berlin Conference, also called the Congo Conference, just take a look at the lasting effect in Congo today of the these folk don't even need to return to any place. They're at home. And so the folk at home in Palestine must do what to make way for this quote-unquote repatriation of a persecuted people? I need some explanation, y'all. Y'all need to help me understand this. Critics of Zionism view it as a colonialist, racist, exceptionalist, American exceptionalism, exceptionalist ideology that led advocates to violence during mandatory Palestine, followed by the exodus of Palestinians and the subsequent denial of their right to return to lands and property lost during the 1948 and 1967 wars. I guess it's the golden rule. They who have the gold make the rules. And so we stand with Rastafari and their efforts at repatriation and reparations. I'm not yielding any of it. Repatriation and reparations. Because, well, Nasir Fontaine has a reminder for us. Do you remember Black Tuesday?
There is blood on your land. Thieves and murderers.
Yes, I.
From mountains right down to the sea. Pushing to Scotland, Lord, is police brutality. Yes, yeah. Cause the devil gave the order, police I should have killed. Rasta is the victim, well, shouldn't you kill for the trade of deal. Do you remember Black Tuesday? Said I hope you remember. Do you remember Black Friday? Do you remember? Do you remember Black Tuesday? Said I hope you remember, yes.
Do you remember
Black Friday? Lord, Lord, Lord. Others are weeping because their sons are dead. We never fire the bullets, oh no. No, we're not yet. We never started the fire, oh no, no, no. Now we are burning. Do you, yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you remember?
Yes. Do you remember
Black Tuesday? Said I hope you remember.
Do you remember Black Friday?
Do you remember?
Do you remember Black Tuesday?
Said I hope you remember, yes.
Do you remember Black Friday?
Lord, Lord, Lord. Yeah. What? Do you remember? Murder. Do you remember? Yeah. What? Do you remember? Murder. Do you remember? Do you remember? You killed some brothers in a Portsmouth. You killed some brothers in a Dallas. You brothers on the West Coast. South City man, them you brutalize. Rasta man, them you brutalize. Oh, I remember. Do you remember Black Tuesday? Said I hope you remember. Do you remember Black Friday? Do you remember? Do you remember Black Tuesday? Said I hope you remember. Yes. Do you remember Black Friday? Lord, Lord, Lord.
Gang. Hey, roots reggae music. Yes, indeed. Good music, whatever. It's just, listen now. The Soweto Uprising, says Bongo Joe, aka Black Tuesday. And of course, Bad Friday, that Friday in Jamaica, when the Prime Minister said, bring them in, dead or alive. If the prison can't hold them, the cemetery can. Yeah. Rastafari. The works of Nacio Fontaine, the track is called Black Tuesday. That's as much information as I have for you, Everett. You'll have to do the legwork on that one. Nacio, N-A-S-I-O, Fontaine, out of Dominica. I just love this brother and his work. On that note, you know what happened? Feel like annex Nacio. Why not? Because Babylon have to reckon. Sing.
Whoa, whoa. Yeah, yeah. Babylon, you speak out peace, yet you make more words. Suppress the innocent to deceive the poor.
Babylon, you doom.
Take on destruction, hungry baby mother breast run dry.
That's what he calls it.
Yet till you plan more woes in you. Private session, Babylon, you do. You do.
Hey, watch you now.
Babylon, you fail. Yes, you fell. Babylon, you do. Do. Babylon, you fail. Yes, you fell. Building more bombs and guns, yet the babies are dying from hunger. We are the victims of your oppression. Blood of the innocent that you slaughtered is upon your hands. You gave the guns, you set the fight, and you sit aside and watch the slaughter.
Babylon, you doom.
Babylon, you fail. Yes, you're bad. Babylon, you do. Your writings up on the wall now. Babylon, you fail. Yes, you're bad. Fire burn down low. Babylon, you fell. Yes, you fell. Babylon, you do. The writings up on the wall now. Oh, Babylon, you fell. Yes, you fell.
We are the victims of your oppression.
Baby, mother, breast on
We are the victims of your oppression.
and every woman on another life, yeah. Woman, yes.
We are the victims of your oppression.
Woman, yes.
The victim of your oppression.
Oh, woman, yes, you destroy. Woman, yes, you take.
Oh, Babylon, you're doom.
Oh, what?
Doom, doom, doom.
So Babylon, you
Babylon, you're doom.
oh, woman.
Doom, doom, doom.
So oppress a man.
Babylon, you're doom.
Oh,
Hey, doom, doom, doom.
it's the wicked man.
Babylon, you're doom.
See them running.
Doom, doom, doom.
Lord, Lord.
Babylon, you're doom.
See them running.
Doom, doom, doom.
Oh,
Babylon, you're doom.
but on your days, Mr.
Doom, doom, doom. Babylon, you're doom. Doom, doom, doom. Yes, indeed, we have to do what we have to do to contain Babylon. Easy, Nasio, easy, brethren. Time around. See? And Omawali says, it is ironic that the Zionists had no problem helping apartheid develop the nuclear bomb to make sure their might remain unmatched on the African continent, ensuring they keep the African people oppressed. And what Omawali didn't say is that a condition of ending apartheid was the dismantling of the nuclear weaponry in South Africa. Yes, indeed. A condition of ending apartheid, because black people are not supposed to have no control over no nuclear weapon. What you deal with? Babylon, you're doomed. That's all I have to say. Now, just imagine, suppose Nasio was Marley. You know, I had an interview with Nasio back in the late 90s up at WVIP, and he shared with us, myself and Junior Jawara Blake, that he was actually being considered for a movie to play the part of Bob Marley in a movie on Marley's life. I don't think that movie was made, and it certainly wasn't played by Nasio. But it's interesting that you should say, imagine, suppose Nasio was a Marley. He was actually being considered to play Bob Marley in a movie at one point. We had this conversation in the latter half of 1990, I would say, up at WVIP, when we used to do the meeting in the African Village Square. I had the honor of renaming a program Jawara did called Reggae Reasoning, and then I went to work for Healthy and said, brethren, we have to put Africa in the center of it, you know. It's a meeting in the African Village Square is what we have to do. We have to infuse Africa into it as we move towards reclaiming our African minds. And once we come to that consciousness, that realization, then we have a duty to pass it on.
What your hands do, it's your own eyes have seen. So
So won't you judge your actions to make sure the results are clean? It's your own conscience that is gonna remind you that it's your heart and nobody else's that he's gonna judge. Be not selfish. Be not selfish in your doing. In your doing. Pass it on. Oh, pass it on. Yeah. Help your brother in their need. In their need. Pass it on. Live for yourself. You will live in vain. You will live in vain. Live for honor. Live for honor. You will live again. Yeah. In the kingdom of Jah, man shall reign. Man shall reign. Pass it on. Pass it on. Yeah. Pass it on. Pass it on. Yeah. Pass it on. Pass it on. Pass it on. What's in the darkness, yeah, must be revealed to light. We're not here to judge what's good from bad, but to do the things that are right. On a hot sunny day, under the shadows for rescue. Well, as the day grows old, I know your sin's gonna find you. Be not selfish. Be not selfish in your doing. In your doing. Pass it on. Please. Yeah. Help your brother. Help your brother. In their need. In their need. Pass it on. Pass it on. Live for yourself. You will live in vain. Live for others. You will live again. You will live again. In the kingdom of Jah, man shall reign. Man shall reign. Pass it on. 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 Be not selfish in your doing. Pass it, pass it, yeah. Be not selfish. Be not selfish in your doing. Be not selfish in your doing. Pass it on. Pass it on. Oh, help your brother. Help your brother. Help in their need. Pass it on. Live for yourself. Don't you live for yourself? You will live in vain, yeah. Live for others. Live for others. Mama and your papa and your friends and your family. In the kingdom of Jah, man shall reign. Pass it on. Pass it on. Yeah. Pass it on. Pass it on. Pass it on. Pass it on. Oh, yeah.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Pass it on is what it's about. And Sister Asante Wadi will be here with us on Tuesday, November the 2nd, to pass it on. To pass it on. She has dedicated herself to a research-based historical cultural peer-reviewed journal in which the editors are always seeking research-based articles on the global African woman's experience with specific attention to Empress Menen and women of the Ethiopian royal family. She will be passing it on right here on Tuesday, the 2nd of November, as we celebrate Reggae Culture Salute. Do not miss it. And I would really appreciate if you would pass it on. Pass the word. Stuff will be on the website between now and then. Grab it, pass it on. Let folk know. We're going to have in the piece we read, they talked about an ingathering. Yeah, Dr. Maulana Karenga talks about Kwanzaa being an ingathering. Well, we're going to have a Rastafari ingathering on Tuesday, the 2nd of November, to take a look at Empress Menen and her personification of African womanhood. We're going to pass it on. Should I say Colin or Colin Scott Johnson, as we remember Colin Powell? Colin Scott Johnson, how do you do, brethren? Preach, my brother, he says. Teach, my brothers, with the truth in the song. Yes, indeed. And I'm glad you mentioned that, Colin. That was, of course, Lloyd Brown out of England, featuring Don Campbell, Wayne Marshall, and Delroy Pinnock from the works of Bunny Wailer, telling us to pass it on. Don't keep it to yourself. We talk about the fact that we have uneven development in our community. And we don't have to look down on someone because their development is not where our development is. I've been at this for more than 50 years. I would expect that I would have a little something on top of somebody who just came to it. And even somebody who's been at it for the same amount of time, we're going to have some different dimensions. We can exchange, we can reason together and pass it on. But there is going to be uneven development. And we have to have patience with one another. We have to be willing to hear. Them say, is there a reason why God gave away one mouth and two ears? See? So we can listen twice as much as we talk. Yes, make we reason together. And of course, I invite you to put your 2 cents in the chat room from time to time, so we indeed having a reasoning together. This is not supposed to be a monolith. It's real talk. It's the natural mystic edition of real talk as we move towards Reggae Culture Salute on Tuesday. I'm so used to saying Saturday. On Tuesday, November the 2nd, we ask you to pass it on, spread the word, and come on out and be a part of it. Where's the Lucy? Come and be a part of it.
This is Lucian as a messenger, inviting you to support CPR, the Coalition to Preserve Reggae and Keep Roots Reggae Music Alive. CPR is a non-profit organization. Come and be a part of this. It's a wonderful celebration.
Give praise to Rastafari.
For more information, call 718-421-6927. That's 718-421-6927.
A coalition to preserve reggae music. Preserve reggae music. Reggae music is alive. CPR will preserve reggae music. Sing it. Preserve reggae music. Reggae music is live. Reggae music is live.
Indeed, reggae music is life, and we will be taking a look at the life of Empress Menen. Empress, you know something? I am so looking forward to this because I don't know nothing. Me will be a student. I don't know. Listen, you better log on and help me with the question. Because I don't know what to ask. I don't know nothing. I know nothing about Empress Menen. So we can all learn together and we can all teach each other together. I will definitely be channeling your questions and comments. By the way, we're going to have some other folks participating. I've been talking a lot about about Asante Wawadi, but other folk will be here. And we'll tell you more about them next week. I don't want to miss out anybody, so I'll have more information about that next week. But Ras Burnett, poet, will be here. He will be sharing a poem he calls "What Would This World Be Without Rasta?" And I have a question for him, but I'm not telling him, because I might go tell him the question I'm going to ask him. I have a question for ask him about that. Yeah, well, what would this world be without Rasta? What would this world be without Rasta is the question. And we're coming towards the end, and I played this piece on Tuesday, and there was, I guess, curiosity about it. And so I'm going to do it again. I think I did it at the beginning of the evening when we were having some technical situation. Started to use the Virgin as a filler at that time. But this time is his time. I'm going to close the show. But before we close the show, I really want to say thanks to all of y'all for checking out the program. A very special thanks to those of you who commented in the chat room and helped me move it along, because I couldn't do it alone. You know that. I'm going to have it like that. I need the help. I'm glad for the help when you give me the help. Sometimes I ball and beg and you don't give me no help, but this evening you all were quite helpful, and I appreciate of it. I'm not going to, should I try to repeat all the names? No, I'm going to skip over people. I see Colin Scott Johnson, Everett McKetty, Bongo Joe, Omawale. I remember I saw Sister Coochie in there. I saw Shaka Cousins in there. And I know I'm overlooking people. So people trying to have me up, you know. Trying to have me up because I work my work. I can't idle and I work. I can't lay and I work. I have to stay focused to bring the information that I have to bring, and to invite you to help me share the information, because y'all have information and y'all shared some here this evening. Real talk is what we like. We like for you to be engaged. It's an interactive platform. We want it to be an interactive platform. We want, Sister Alma John, the late Alma John used to say up in Harlem, each one teach one, each one reach one. We want ones and ones to congregate and make reason together. But Bonnie Wheeler say, you find them in the gullies? Yeah, the black heart man. A pure black heart people. I hope you too have a black heart. And that not only that you have a black heart, but that you're a warrior man, you're a warrior woman. You can relate to Ijaman Levi when he says, are we a warrior? Peace and love. Thanks for stopping by. See you on Tuesday, Diaspora Dialogue. We're moving to Reggae Culture Salute. It's the Tuesday after next. Spread the word. See you then. Peace.
The hurt is a lover God, and I give thanks for his goodness within his firmaments. His golden days and blossoming nights, his gentle hands. Made I man, son of him, life was divided in sweet harmony. coming, women and children, oh, we are warriors. Oh, we are warriors. Oh, Cupid, it's still begin. Let not your arrow go from your love. There's a mountain so silent and filled, fountains of water. For us his loving creatures, he gave us wisdom and knowledge, understand his love. Do we have to have one? Oh, we are one. It's you, baby. Let your arrow go from your bow and never let it go. What cause you have a pistol in your hand? Is it for to shut down my to overstorm love? Why can't we become like a love? Lord, it's not only when there's a small confusion, it is a war. There are the ways as real, even being confused within your own head, because at times hearts get heavier than lead. Oh, we a warrior. Oh, we are warrior. Oh, we are warrior. It's you, baby. Let your arrow go from your bow and never let it go. Take a look at sad children and read tales of virtue stories. It should begin when all around glory the hour has come. And still I can see the love and peace of for food, clothes and shelter, and crying of mamas and papas. Oh, we are warriors. Oh, we are warriors. Oh, we are warriors. Oh, Cupid, it's you, baby. Lift your arrow from your bow. Prophecy has now revealed the Son of Man won't take heed. The herd is giving up while life is taken in a sudden shock. The crying of the people multiplying all over. Jah milk dip and